For Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Racist golf balls, rainbow-coloured fire engines and magazines being ripped off the shelf for causing offence. This is Free Speech Nation. It's okay to be wrong. And that's my theory, and if it's proved incorrect, well, I guess that's okay. Have you ever wondered why the culture war seems so intractable? It's because of that. There are many things that people disagree about, but we make our peace with it and move on. Apparently, I don't know how to stack a dishwasher properly, but my partner only brings it up once in a while, during a row about other things, mainly. Marmite, the most Marmite of issues, splits the nation down the middle, and yet we cope somehow. Half the population likes the spread, the other half are right, but somehow we don't bang our heads together about it all the time. And yet the culture war seems to be fueled by something else. This week, a new report looked at one of the reasons why we're having this problem: intellectual humility. It's the extent to which people can accept that they might be wrong. And counterintuitively, the more willing you are to consider that you might be wrong, the more likely you are to be right. It was John Maynard Keynes who said, "When the facts change, I change my mind." Unless it was someone else who said it, in which case, yeah, I'd accept that too. If you give an opinion and then you're unwilling to ever change your mind, you're stuck with your first rough guess. And thanks to social media these days, everyone's opining about everything. So if 5 years ago you sent a tweet so sure that J.K. Rowling should be cancelled, no one can talk you down from that position. And we end up with a sport called quad ball, which sounds more like a painful medical condition. That actually happened, by the way. People have stopped playing Quidditch in real life, not because that's a silly thing to do, but because they didn't like who invented it. Meanwhile, people still wear Hugo Boss perfume. An unwillingness to accept that you may have been wrong triggers good old confirmation bias. Rather than drawing a conclusion from facts, you go looking for facts that support your conclusion, and you dig in. And if once you've said it, that's it. If you've said chemtrails look suspicious, well, you end up doubling down until you're convinced that they're dispensing drugs which makes humans more compliant. Apart from you for some reason. If you expressed an opinion about how good masks are during the early part of a pandemic, you can't relax when we're awash with vaccine. You have to double down until you're dressed like a beekeeper to go for a walk in a park on your own. There's a well-known psychological phenomenon that shows that the more intelligent you are, the more you accept doubt. Or to put it another way, the more certain you are, the more you might be stupid. It's called the Diane Kruger effect. Now, people try and tell me it's called something else, but I'm fairly sure they're wrong. Now, we don't just need intellectual humility, we need a dash of empathy in there as well, because with that, you realise it's OK for others to be wrong. We can have a conversation instead of shutting our ears and cancelling them forever. Take the case of footballer Mark Bowler. Some homophobic tweets were found from when he was 14, and England cricketer Ollie Robinson was handed an 8-game ban following the unearthing of racist and sexist tweets in 2012. That's when Robinson was 18. But can't we forgive? I mean, we've all written things when we were young and foolish that don't represent us now. When I was a child, I wrote a letter to Jimmy Savile. And if anything, I was complimentary in that letter. If someone finds it now, I don't want to be cancelled for it. I was only being nice because I wanted to get on a roller coaster next to a plump kid. So this is where the culture war is lasting forever. The war rages on, But the two camps don't battle with each other. A lack of this intellectual humility means that people would rather cancel those who disagree with them, silence the other side. And that way, you never have to test your ability to change your mind. Jerry Sadowitz was cancelled for using some offensive language. OK, but then look at the context of language. Too late. I've already shut my mind down. I can't do context. I've picked a side and I need to stick to it. So now I have to think that anyone who uses any of those words should be cancelled forever. But with a little bit of intellectual humility, a little bit of empathy and an awareness of Miss Kruger, we could actually move the discussion forward and end the culture war. I'm presuming people want to end the culture war and aren't secretly enjoying being happy for no reason. On that, I'm probably wrong. Well, helping me do some of this discussion, we have studio guests this evening. I'm joined by Josh Howie and Louis Schaefer. Just to make you look really fancy, I know that you've literally just got back off holiday.
I have just got off holiday. I got off the plane at 6 this morning, and now I come into the studio, and I'm incredibly offended by what I just heard you say.
That's what we're going for. And Louis Schaefer, who I've been told in my earpiece to say they've looked online and there is no corroboration to the claims you've already made. Sorry, that's for later. I think they've got one of those ready for later.
Well, there's something called, you said the Dunning-Kruger.
Yep.
Kruger effect.
But I called it the Diane-Kruger, and that was
yes,
the joke.
that was quite funny. That was quite funny. I think you lost it on the audience here. But, oh my God, I've gotten off to a bad start. But the point is there's the Louis Schaefer effect, which is where you know very little, but you happen to be right.
Like the stop clock effect?
No.
No, because that happens twice a day, and you've got a hit rate nowhere near that.
Let's call it iceberg thinking, where you can look at something that is like the very small little bit of the top of the peak and know what the rest of the story is going to be like.
Well, let's put that to the test as we get stuck into some of these then. So let's get some questions from our audience. Our first question comes from Myra.
What should the new Prime Minister do to promote free speech?
Well, big, important issues, because, yep, we are about to have a new one. Who wants to take that first? Josh Howie.
I've been on holiday. I didn't even know we were getting a new Prime Minister.
Oh. How long were you on holiday, man? This has been going on for 3 months.
Not long enough. What should she do to... Well, yeah, they need... It's obviously an issue. I mean, have they cancelled the hate bill yet? You know, like the hate speech bill?
No one's done anything because of this.
OK, so this has been ongoing. So they put... I mean, obviously, this whole idea of a zombie government, and this is what's been going on now. And now it's like the backlog is going to take so long to just get through what they've not done for 6 weeks. Are we ever actually going to get back to doing anything?
By which time we'll probably need a new Prime Minister. The rate they're whipping through them, we will have had 4 in 6 years, is it? Yeah. That is a huge... No wonder the Queen's thinking, not again. Next one, she's doing it on Zoom.
Yeah. Actually, the Queen is probably happy for the visits. I mean, I would be. Somebody coming and saying, hey, listen, you're important. At that age, it's good to be thought of as being important. Not that the Queen does anything. Does the Queen do anything? Of course she does. She can decide whether the government stands or doesn't stand. But I know that kills British people to believe that. What would I do if I was the Prime Minister? I would do what I've been saying should be doing for the last 12 years, because I'm a Tory, if I was the Prime Minister, which is I would do everything, whatever they say they should do, which is they should get rid of the police taking action against thought speech. They should close the borders. They should do everything.
So you're in favour of free speech. You're in favour of the Prime Minister doing things to help free speech. What about the bit where, if it's Liz Truss, and who knows, it might be, she did say that she will no longer allow people to talk down this country. That's not technically free speech, is it?
It depends who those people are.
Oh,
if they're dirty foreigners like myself, I think she's got every right to say, shut that guy up. But if it's a British citizen, of course, she has no right to do that. But it's a question of who it is. I think we let people. That's one thing about what makes this country great, is the free speech. Is you let somebody like me come in who is filled with hatred and bitterness and say bad things about the British people, and it's like I'm always shocked when I see that. And so, Britain is a great country, the greatest country in the world because it created America. But did I answer the question? I don't know, but
I like how you're making us the sitcom Cheers and you're Frasier. Somehow that's the comparison.
Yeah.
On to our next question, which is from John.
Good evening. Should taxpayers' money be spent on rainbow-coloured fire engines?
That is an interesting one. Should this money be spent on fire engines? This is because it's been revealed that a fire brigade spent over £17,000 painting fire engines in rainbow colours. These paint jobs have been approved by a series of fire and rescue bosses since 2017. County councils say that the coloured engines help them achieve equality, diversity and inclusion goals. Let's go to Lewis first on this one. Do you reckon it's a good way of spending our cash?
I think it's a good way. I mean, I'm from New York, and I'm old enough to remember when Stonewall really was Stonewall, and we used to go down to the Village during my gay years, and not gay in the UK, but we used to go down there, and there were always incredible fights among we used to call them trannies. I don't know if that's offensive. Whatever now, but they were up at the trannies and these bridge and tunnel.
Let's not do a thing where we list things that weren't offensive in the 70s and see if it is now.
I'm a little nervous that Andrew is not here to stop me from saying.
We're all nervous about that.
Is whatever you call the people today? Whatever.
Should we get to the meat of the story?
The meat of the story. See, there's no free speech. We were constantly seeing fights among the guys or the girls dressed up as guys, whatever they were, with the supposedly tough New Jersey kids coming from the bridge and tunnel, coming in from New Jersey to beat up a gay guy.
Can I ask you a question? Do you know what a fire engine is?
And I'm saying these dudes were the toughest dudes in the entire world. And if we have to paint a fire engine those colors to get those guys to work for the fire department, I think it's a brilliant idea.
Josh, save us.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? It's beyond the fact it's a waste of money, obviously. Maybe they should be spending that on, like, water. They're doing it for this sort of it's virtue signalling, obviously, and they're doing it to meet these requirements that they are then seen to be a sort of inclusive environment. I would suggest that money, if they are going to spend money on that, should be spent on doing something more than just sort of painting something, and whether that's whatever effort is to go, fly to New York, spend the money, fly into New York, find these people that Lewis is talking about, and say, you want to come over to the UK and join our fire department, we need you.
Yeah.
We need your fighting skills. But this idea that somehow painting a rainbow on a fire engine is going to suddenly make the fire service more inclusive, that's almost as ridiculous as the waste of money in itself.
Yeah. I tried to read through the article to see if we could work out how much would have been spent on painting those fire engines anyway. But I couldn't. It turns out they hadn't included that thing. Because if it was just that they needed a paint job anyway, we would have to spend this money, pick a colour, not red again, and maybe that's why they went for... I can't imagine that's actually...
Maybe it's easy to see. It actually makes good sense. It's one of the easiest colours. Well, you're definitely going to get out of the way if it's going down the street. And that's what...
What, if you're homophobic?
People are going to end up chasing it on the fast lane thinking there's a pot of gold at the end of it.
And you know what? It's only £17,000. I mean, really, that's like... The budgets of these fire departments is unbelievable. It's basically a pair of those boots that they have.
It's a week's worth of electricity these days. It will be soon. Well, move on to our next question, which is from Kev.
Hi, guys. Should we be working a 4-day week?
Should we be working a 4-day week? Liberal Democrat Council is planning to trial a 4-day week for staff who will remain on full pay. That's an important factor. South Cambridgeshire District Council are planning to start this trial next year. The council say that they wanted a 4-day week as recruitment aid because they've been struggling to fill vacant posts. Is that a job you'd go for if you got to be that, is the word lazy?
Yeah, well, it's... You know what? It's... I think actually the 4-day week is a good idea, or there is a good idea within it. I just don't think it is going to work in a council. Anything that requires people to be there, already trying to get through to council stuff, is a nightmare. So the idea that making 1 day less, but I do know from when I actually had a real job back in the day, the reality is if you have a sort of office job, I could have done that job in 2 days out of the 5 days. If you're realistic, if you stop playing sort of cards on the computer and all the other stuff and start email, the fact is most jobs like that I've had can be squished down into a much shorter time. But when it's stuff that interacts with people and you need to be there for it. All they're saying about like making bin men, like frontline services, already they've been cut. So the idea that they're going to cut it from 37 hours to 30, and already we've got issues with bins only being collected every couple of weeks, where, yeah, that seems ridiculous. But I definitely think there is this idea for some jobs that doing 4 days actually can make you more productive.
And yet that didn't pan out as a career for you. Weird, isn't it? Spent all that time playing solitaire. Oddly...
I was very good at solitaire.
But Josh makes a good point there about if you need to be able to contact people, because at the moment, I don't know if you've tried to get in touch with someone via the phone. The call centres all say, due to unexpected high demand due to COVID. Like, how is it unexpected by now? I mean, I'll give you a year and a half to not expect it, but by now, maybe hire some more people. I mean, we are struggling to get in touch with businesses that we need to contact.
Well, you pointed out the main thing is that I'm surprised that people are even working in the office at all. These people, they've been working from home. I'm surprised the bin men haven't said we want to work from home.
Everyone would have to take their rubbish around their house, though.
Yeah, maybe they would come with a way. And I had a girlfriend. Let me rephrase.
Humble brag.
Humble brag. Not gay. And I had a girlfriend.
You know the name for them, do you?
Yeah. Okay. I had a girlfriend. And she pointed out to me that council workers don't work on a Friday anyway. So what's the big deal? And the third thing is, and I'm not saying the council workers don't do a very valuable job. I was shocked at this story. I didn't even know that the Liberal Democrats were still around. And but number one is that nobody works on a Friday anyway. Okay. Number two is with inflation, the amount of money that they would have to pay these people anyway. So this is an actual brilliant idea on behalf of this woman, not to pay the increased salaries which the people deserve because of inflation.
Oh, so you think it's a get out of giving a pay rise?
It strikes me as possible. I can't imagine the Liberal Democrats thought of this, but it's brilliant.
Someone else thought of a brilliant thing and handed it on to the Liberal Democrats.
I don't know. I don't want to badmouth them, but
it's a bit late for that, isn't it?
Yeah, sorry. I don't like them all, but it's a brilliant idea because everybody's demanding. We're going on strike unless you give us more money. And they say, just don't come in on Friday, but do the same amount of work. So they probably have solved it.
Wow. And that way we won't know if they're on strike or just at home.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you agree with me, Stephen Allen?
I don't know, but I'm glad you get to host this show.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're asking questions. Let's move on to our next one, which is from Plex.
I'm not getting enough feedback from you. Was that a good idea? Was it right? Was I right?
We've moved on now. I don't answer questions. Plex, hello.
Hello. Should teachers be fired for being good-looking and attractive?
Wow, that's the sexiest I've ever seen a question asked here. No,
if you could ask it again while we play some funky guitar in the background, I think it would improve it.
I'll start singing for you if you like.
I think, we'll move on awkwardly. Is it warm in here? So should teachers be fired?
I don't even know what the question was. I was just sort of enthralled.
I'll say it in a non-sexy way for you if you want. Should the teachers be fired for being attractive? You see, when I do it, it didn't work for you, did it?
And it's gone in.
This is because Patrice Brown, who was a primary teacher in Atlanta, claims that she was fired for being too sexy. The 33-year-old alleged that the head teacher was unhappy about her outfits, photos of which went viral online. And Brown said, what teachers are wearing should not be the focus. The focus should be the kids. Louis Schaefer, I presume you think you've been held back because you're too sexy.
Well, do you want to know something? The truth is that better-looking people get ahead more than uglier ones. And that, everybody knows that that's a fact. I think that was discussed on a previous show, if you were paying attention. And, she's just the head was probably just jealous of her, really, that she was getting more attention. Women can be, someone else is better looking, so, gets more men, gets the one man who's still working at a school in America to pay attention to her, so she was just jealous. The head was jealous. The principal was.
We'll tune out. We'll tune out of this breakdown and join you later on to see how it's progressing.
I said always ask Josh first.
I will.
No. I was enjoying your Dustin Hoffman impression.
Because you have to look behind the scenes when somebody gives an excuse for why they're fired in any situation. And I know I've given a million of them because I've been fired. I've had the police come twice to offices in New York to escort me out of offices. I was a very bad employee.
All very sexy. We don't know, do we?
But you come up with reasons why why they fired me. I was too pretty, too smart, I was too good, she thought I had my job, whatever. You know what it is. There was probably because the head was probably a woman, and she was a woman, she can't use the male card, but because they were probably the same racial group, they can't use the racial card, so she pulls out any card that she can, which is, I'm beautiful.
And this is why they gave me that card earlier. We've looked online and there's no evidence to corroborate any of the things you've just said. we don't know. Just at least I was ready for it.
I said, how could that be not corroborated? It wasn't a woman. Was it a woman head?
You said that the head was probably a woman. We don't know.
Yes,
we don't know.
Because no woman would say I got fired because that man thought I was too beautiful.
Oh, controversial.
Is that true? Is that
Some of the beautiful people in the audience are
Take a vote
disagreeing
from
with
the
it.
audience.
Well, we've got to speak to Josh on this one because, look, I mean, is it just an excuse? I don't know if you saw the pictures. Tight jeans, really. I wear roughly the same outfit.
Yeah. Well, she's got like 1 million followers on Instagram, or more than that, I think, and she's obviously spending a lot of time on that as opposed to being a teacher, but she might be an amazing teacher. It's interesting because we have a lot of talks here about like the drag queens reading the books, and there seems to be a common argument, the over-sexualization towards children, but I don't know if children are really going to be picking that up at that age. I don't know if you fancied your teacher or not. I did.
Not at that age, but...
No, I probably did, I think.
Yeah? Can we say which teacher it was?
No, we're married now, and...
Brilliant. Right, let's move on to our final question for the moment, which comes from Mary.
Hi. Are we saying golf balls are racist now?
Are we saying golf balls are racist now? This is because a new exhibition at the home of golf, St Andrews in Scotland, examines the game's history and claims it has a somewhat checkered past. Researchers from the University of St Andrews claim that the game was, and this is the quote, imposed by the British Empire on colonial countries in the 19th century. The researchers added that golf balls are connected to imperial exploitation because they were made out of rubber harvested from those countries. Josh, I'll go to you. Are you a golf player and therefore a racist?
No, but I was thinking about... no, but I was thinking the golf ball's connected to the imperialist... yeah, this is an interesting story. I'm not that interested in golf, but then this idea that Britain imposed it on... Is that the same with cricket? Didn't Britain do a lot of, like, good things? I understand that there were some bad things, but there are good things that went across in colonialism as well. I don't know if golf would be necessarily one of them, but also this idea that sort of whole jungles have been kind of destroyed for golf balls is a little bit ridiculous. Like, later on in this article, they did mention it was actually rubber for insulation with wires that did it. So they sort of they were trying to make this connection that somehow... Oh my God, it's an environmental catastrophe, these tiny little balls. I don't know, man, like, it's golf. This is really boring. Even talking about it, let alone playing it.
And sadly, I'd love to disagree with you, but it's golf. I mean,
I'm sorry, I'm going to get some tweets from some irate golf players.
No, but they won't. There's no way they'll have time because they're always playing golf.
Okay, well, there we go.
Everyone thinks there are other reasons you can't see your GP, but it's golf. That's the main reason. I'm guessing you play golf.
Well, do you know what? Looking at Josh, Mr. Jew over there, and there's the...
Sorry, Mrs. Jew over there.
Well, I mean, you see, basically, you're carrying it around on your chest there. It's like I'm way more Jewish than you are. I'm more of a Jewy Jew than you are. And these people think, oh, he's the Jew on the panel. No, I am the Jew. And Jews don't play... What's that famous book? Famous.
That's not true. Larry David plays golf. He's got half his sitcoms about him playing golf.
Now they do. But it used to.
I'm kicking you out, mate.
You know what? You can't because I'm there. Anyway, the point is that it's a very white game, golf. You know, the whitest people play golf. Tiger Woods, and he's the whitest guy. And the fact that the British, whatever, imposed it on other people. I don't remember. I come from New York. I don't remember them coming into my neighborhood and saying, "You're playing golf." Get out stop working and play golf. I what it is? I think it's reaching peak stupidity, and maybe that's what's good when that happens. Eventually, people will you can only take this ridiculousness so far, and then people will stop being ridiculous.
Yeah. You think this is the thing that really gets people? Of any injustice, we can take that, but golf, you will never... You can take our freedom, but you'll never take our 19 holes.
Our golf.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the white people just feel like they want to hold on to it, and that's one of the few things that they've got going for themselves. Whatever.
No, but the other... You know what? And a serious thing there, the other thing I did read in this article was they were saying how... like the Mills back at the turn of the century appropriated foreign styles. Like it was a bad thing. But for me, this whole idea, that's what cultures do. That's the best of cultures, is going across, taking that, giving this. That's how humanity progresses. So this idea that belongs to them and this belongs to us and there's no crossover, then everybody freezes. So the idea that they're selling it like it's a bad thing, for me, that's the great crime.
And you just came back from holiday today, so I'm lucky you don't still have a bit of the accent. Where is it you came back from?
I came back from Greece.
But spent a lot of time with Italians, apparently. Wow. After the break on Free Speech Nation, at times of crisis where you probably need as many people as possible debating the key issues. But is that how it works out in practice? Journalist Fraser Myers will be joining us to discuss this. We'll see you in 2 minutes.
On Mark Dolan tonight, it's our new Prime Minister special, with Liz Truss expected to win the keys to number 10 tomorrow. In the big question, can she win the next general election? I'll be asking Anne Widdecombe, Edwina Currie and Vince Cable. Plus the political editor of the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson, Neil and Christine Hamilton live in the studio, and the brilliant commentator Sam Dowler. And in my big opinion, my manifesto for our new PM. In Liz, we must all trust. That's our new Prime Minister special, tonight at 9 on GBNews.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. Ridiculously high energy bills, inflation running rampant, and the NHS struggling to meet high demand. As winter looms, we face a string of problems in this country, but how are we equipped to deal with them? Maybe we can learn from the last major crisis, which happened all of 2 years ago. Remember the pandemic? Well, Fraser Myers, the deputy editor at Spiked, has been writing about this very issue and joins us now. Welcome, Fraser.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I was reading you've been writing about what happened during lockdown, about how dissenting voices were not heard. So give us a little bit of the background there and how in which these voices were trimmed off.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's important to look back and think about lockdown being one of the most consequential and significant decisions that a government has ever taken in our lifetimes. You know, shutting down the economy, shutting down schools, curtailing our liberties. One High Court justice called it the most restrictive regime on the life of people ever. You know, beyond wartime measures, essentially. And yet, there wasn't really much debate about it. There was a kind of unanimity from the government, from politicians, in the media, on social media. And, you know, you think there would have been some dissent about this kind of huge kind of experimental measure that we were taking. And it's interesting, last week or the week before, we found out that Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor at the time, even he had his reservations about lockdown, but they weren't being heard. He was saying that effectively no one was really talking about the problems to come in schools. No one was really talking about the problems building for the NHS. And, you know, even more significantly, you know, there were scientists who had reservations about what was happening, people on the SAGE committee that advises the government. But a lot of the time, when they would speak up in the meetings, this wasn't reflected in the minutes that the Prime Minister was given. So he's saying essentially the meetings were kind of almost edited to have criticism taken out of them.
Yeah. So what do you think the reason behind that is, then? What's the motivating force?
I think that there was a kind of a conformism that spread, you know, in society. I think that a lot of people were afraid and they felt that, you know, to sort of speak out against this would be... It was as if, you know, dissent itself was a public health problem. They weren't just clamping down on the virus, but the virus of dissent, the virus of wrongthink, so to speak. So within the government, if people challenged the lockdown, they were seen as challenging Boris Johnson's authority. In the wider public, if you challenged the lockdown, or if you're a journalist who challenged the lockdown, you were seen as challenging the science, and therefore, you know, that's a view, your view is misinformation, potentially dangerous misinformation that could lead to people being killed. And, you know, more broadly, in the kind of cultural debate, I just remember, you know, there was a real vociferous response anytime someone raised any questions. You know, if you said this could be a problem for the economy, well, then the response was, you're just greedy, you care more about, you know, money than lives. If you said this is a problem for our liberties, well, you're just a selfish idiot who just wants to go to the pub. If you think that there's, you know, problems in education for children, then, well, you obviously just want children to die and you want to let the virus rip and let the bodies pile high.
Wasn't that one kill grannies? I seem to remember that was the phrase they used on that one.
I mean, yeah, Matt Hancock, you know, the health secretary at the time, literally said, "Don't kill Granny." You know,
I mean, it's good advice. Anyway.
It is a good. I would strongly advise people not to not to do that.
Glad we got that out. Yeah. So the thing that I struggle to reconcile is the two things. So the motivating factor is no one wanted to dissent, but there were people who wanted to dissent, and they were silenced. So if there were people who wanted to dissent, the motivating factor isn't that no one wanted to dissent. Do you know what I mean? It's difficult to square this particular circle.
Well, I think you know, the vast majority of people did agree with the restrictions, and that's fine. You know, I think there's obviously a good argument for why we needed a lockdown. But when you're in a crisis and when people are, you know, almost like lemmings rushing towards a cliff, you do need to hear the people who say this is a mistake. It might not have been a mistake. You know, that's the other thing. That's the great thing about free speech, is that, you know, we have to be able to test ideas to find out, you know, who's right and who's wrong eventually. Not every dissenting scientist is going to be Galileo and is going to, you know, be absolutely correct just because they disagree with the groupthink. But we still need to be able to challenge that kind of groupthink in order to get, you know, the best outcome for society.
Yeah, it's OK to be wrong. I'm sure I heard a
I wonder where I got that
from. But so to that point, though, about the... So it's very easy to get back into having the same argument we were all having in 2020. And it almost feels like that's where we never improve. Let's all get back into the row of, oh, mask, no mask. But the point is, even if you were saying something which ultimately was proved right or wrong, the ability to say it is something that should have been respected. Our system has it built in. We have an opposition. We have a parliament to debate stuff. It was their job to be doing this debate. What went wrong?
Well, they just abdicated their duty. I mean, people might remember the early days of the lockdown, you know, the first lockdown. One of the first things that happened was that Parliament was suspended. And not a single, you know, MP spoke out against this. They declared themselves non-essential. And then, and then when, you know, Parliament came back and you know, the Labour Party basically agreed with the government. And then when they did disagree, it was to say that we should have, you know, harsher kind of more punitive measures. At the same time as well, one thing we haven't touched on yet is the kind of big tech angle, the big tech censorship. So voices were being, censored or flagged as disinformation by YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. And often the basis of that was, do they go against the World Health Organization advice? And so the view of the World Health Organization was taken to be sort of holy writ, which is odd because, earlier on in the pandemic, they'd made mistakes. They said that the human-to-human transmission of COVID was not happening, which is an absurd thing looking at it now. They're allowed to make the mistakes. It was an evolving situation. No one claimed or should have claimed to have all the answers back then. But that's kind of the point. We need to, we don't know the answers. We need to test out different ideas. That's always, how we make progress.
So the nervous thing is we're thinking, OK, we're not going to have the same crisis, but who knows what's happening? The newspapers are all doom-mongering left, right and centre. Yeah. So what do we learn from that crisis that we could use for future things, for when it kicks, if it kicks off,
when it kicks off. I think, there's got to be no taboos, really, when we're approaching this, the energy crisis, for instance, or the cost of living crisis. Certainly, just to give you one example, there's a lot of, it's very difficult to say that maybe some of the mistakes we've made in pursuing green energy were a bad idea. It's not as reliable as fossil fuels or nuclear and things like that. But it's very difficult to have those kinds of conversations. I'm not saying that that is going to get us out of the energy crisis by any means, but we want to hear as many new voices and ideas as possible because we are in a big hole, and conventional boring plodding thinking, consensus groupthink is not going to get us out of this. We need some quite radical ideas, and we need to be able to hear and debate those.
So you wrote about being a dissenting voice. I just wondered, have you received any pushback from that?
In terms of, I've received pushback at the time.
Yeah.
I think people probably surreptitiously unfriended me over it and things like that. And yeah, I remember it was very difficult, but I don't want to present myself as some kind of hero. I'm not. I was just following, that's just what I felt, and I felt the need to say that. And there were many other kind of honourable people who were saying the same thing. And I know that the people on the other side were completely motivated by good, the need to save lives and things like that. So, I don't want to sort of over-moralise this, if that makes sense.
You sure? Because that seems like that'd be fun. I'm not trying to push you.
There's a part of me that there's a part of me that says, look at all these terrible mistakes. Didn't you see this coming? You were warned. We told you so. But how far does that really get us?
And everyone gets to play that. It doesn't matter what it is. You could look back and go, oh no, that was the bit when I was right.
Yeah.
You could always re-edit history for it. So I was just thinking, if you've not received loads of hate online for writing something saying we should be allowed to talk about this, maybe we have changed. Do you get a sense that? This is a leading question because I'm presuming it's a no. But do you get a sense that social media is ready to listen to dissenting voices?
I think so. It changes with every issue, right? So I think we're making progress on lockdown, for instance. There are more and more people now saying, more and more higher up people saying we would never have another lockdown, for instance. But, when the next debate comes along, there will be the same thing. People will jump up and down and say, you can't say this, you can't say that. And then eventually we'll kind of reach a new consensus, take the trans issue. I think there's been there's more openness to discussing that than there was a year ago. People were silenced immediately, but now there's a kind of growing opposition to some of the kind of more extreme elements of that people are now open to hearing, that people are now open to debating in Parliament and talking about in newspapers. So, if you are dissenting and you have the right on your side, then carry on, because things can always improve and, the right arguments can win out in the end.
And do you think politicians are better? Because you're right, I think one of the things that did happen is they all thought, oh, let's all go home and not do the job.
Yeah.
Do you think that there would be better debate in Parliament moving forwards?
I don't have that much hope about the current crop of politicians.
Okay.
I think, we'll get the usual kind of mudslinging, a lot of heat, not very much light. It's kind of what I expect. But maybe we need both.
During an electricity crisis, I'll take the heat. Go for it. Thank you very much, Fraser. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
After the break on Free Speech Nation, we'll be joined by a writer for European Conservative after the magazine was apparently taken off the shelves at WHSmith due to customer complaints. Don't go away.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farrow.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. Later in the show, I'll be turning to Agony Uncle with the help of my panel, Josh Howie and Lewis Schaefer, to deal with your unfiltered dilemmas. You can email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk, and we will try to answer your issues. Now, complaints from people on social media about a magazine saw WHSmith allegedly remove the publication from its shelves. People took to Twitter and Instagram, as they always do, to complain about the content of The European Conservative, a quarterly journal covering conservative philosophy, politics and the arts. According to the magazine, the social media storm led to the publication being immediately removed from WHSmith's shelves without warning. To discuss further, I'm joined by Harrison Pitt, who's a writer at the European Conservative. Thank you for joining us, Harrison.
Thank you very much.
So if you could, just spell the story out for us. Tell us about the events that led up to your magazine being cancelled.
So my understanding is that we've had a commercial relationship with WHSmith for around 6 months at this point, and it was going fairly well. We've had 2 of our editions appearing in their stores, and there were no complaints were ever made by the management of WHSmith itself until 2 reasonably high-profile people, in fact. They weren't just ordinary customers. 2 reasonably high-profile people from the arts world took to their public Instagram accounts to highlight some of the content which they objected to, and they tried to incite a sort of social media storm to have us taken off shelves, and WHSmith seemed to have obliged for the time being, at least.
I'm presuming you must have confronted WHSmith on this, and have they given reasons for their actions?
They've been silent, so that's part of the problem initially. So this happened on the 19th of August, so this happened about 2 weeks ago. And initially, our strategy was to be fairly magnanimous and to try and solve it, the dispute privately, and see if we can get an explanation out of WHSmith. We've decided to go public precisely because they refused to answer our queries, and naturally we had queries, and they've been silent up till now.
I suppose we're in that awkward gap of the discussion of debate about the idea of freedom of speech isn't the guaranteed freedom to be in WHSmith. But if it's just some complaints or a social media movement, if no one's actually got a reason to complain, if you didn't break the law, then why are you being subjected to the punishment?
Well, quite. And of course, a libertarian argument can be made that WHSmith are under no legal obligation to stock us in their stores, but they voluntarily elected to. And as I say, they had no issue with us being on their shelves until these people complained. And it goes to a deeper question, I think, not just of whether WHSmith have fallen afoul of the law. I'm sure they've not in this case, but it's a question of what type of society we want to live in. Do we want to have a public square where a minority of individuals can complain and get their way? Because if we do that, then the result is going to be a colourless, uniform, predictable public debate, or really no public debate at all, rather than the challenging, robust, contentious one that we should all want in an advanced democracy like ours. And so when you have a company like WHSmith, which has the lion's share of the market when it comes to stocking these sorts of publications, and they arbitrarily, take away one magazine from their shelves while everyone else is free to sell their content and to articulate their ideas, there's clearly a one-sided disparity there, which is not healthy in a society which functions on free debate.
Do you have any sympathy for their position? Because one could say this is just another case of a big company thinking path of least resistance. What we don't want is the kind of thing that might impact our sales. If there's a bit of controversy here, we'll avoid it.
Indeed. Well, clearly they calculated that given that we're not the spectator, we're not the critic, we're not that well known, they probably calculated that path of least resistance, it would be better for them just to silently take us away from the shelves, and that would cause less of a headache. But of course, that's why I'm here, to try and prove to them that that's not the case, and we're going to fight back on this, and we're not going to take this flagrant act of censorship lying down. So we want to make it the path of least resistance to keep us on their shelves, if you see what I mean.
Yep, adding resistors to both sides of the circuit. That's what you're trying to go for. Is there anything else you can do? Is this all you can do now, is just try and raise awareness? Or is there any other steps that you can take?
I don't know if the legal route is possible. I don't know if I'm not an expert in commercial law or contract law, but for the time being, as I say, we just want to make it. We want people to make it clear that the British people are not anti-intellectual. They're not given to acts of censorship. They want to be exposed to the fullest variety of views possible, and I think people should make that known, and hopefully the market will respond in reaction to that sort of sentiment. So in answer to your question, yes, at the moment, there are no real alternatives to just trying to kick up a bit of a stink about this, but we're happy to do that.
Well, thank you for bringing that stink over here. Harrison Pitt, writer at European Conservative. We did reach out to WHSmith for comment. We haven't received a reply, but they did ask us if we wanted any half-price chocolate. It might have been about a different issue, but we will continue to try and respond, get them to respond, and we will bring it to you in the programme next week. In the meantime, one customer who complained about the magazine received this as a reply. It read in part, we welcome all customer feedback and we acknowledge the concerns you and other customers have raised regarding the latest issue of European Conservative magazine. We have taken the decision to remove it from sale while we are in discussion with the publisher. To the panel, Josh, is this simple? This is a free speech issue straight down the middle, isn't it? This is just about, if you didn't say something in your magazine that's illegal, why should it be taken down?
Yeah, I mean, look, I haven't read the article. I've never heard. I mean, it's an interesting. Isn't it a bit of an oxymoron, the European Conservative?
They must exist.
I guess so. There's all three of them. Also, Harrison Pitt, handsome, young. They're getting younger. He's going to have his own show here next week.
That's why he's on it.
That's why, yeah. Harrison Pitt as well is like, his parents are like, OK, Brad Pitt, Harrison Ford, we're going to put it together. Let's see how it works out for him. Good luck. But yeah, it is disturbing. I mean, we've seen this where people go, I don't like this, and we're now going to get it unsold or whatever it is, and it does tend to backfire. Now, I can't speak to the actual content of the magazine. I can't say if there was some article in there that would greatly upset me or is hate speech or whatever. But if it's just a difference of opinion over political issues or whatever, yes, then it does seem like the WHSmith is doing what so many other companies have done, which is capitulate immediately out of fear. And that's the giving so much power to the consumer, but so many times we then see this backfire.
How do you mean by backfire?
Well, what we saw with the Royal Academy, they took the works of Jess, her works, they took her T-shirts or her what's it called, needlework, I don't know, whatever. It's really beautiful stuff, but they took it off sale And then suddenly they got so many people complaining and taking their Royal Academy membership, cancelling it, that they then had to sort of apologise and put her back in. And I think she sold much more and she's doing better out of the whole process. But it was just a few people who'd gone, how dare you sell this person's work in your shop? She's got views I don't agree with.
See, in the old days, that would have been a few letters that were sent in. When people used to complain directly, it was different. I think maybe we've just not recalibrated for the power of social media.
And also the ease of it. Like, it's easy for someone to just put for someone to actually do a proper letter and format it on a typewriter. That's the way that it should be now, that to send in a complaint, you've got to spend a good hour with Tipex, if anybody remembers that, and an actual typewriter and back and forth and messing up, and really put that effort in. Now, because it's just like, oh, I don't like that, gone.
Yeah.
And that's what they've done. And so many of these companies have just said, like on Twitter, they'll just go, someone said, oh, I saw you're following this person. Do you know that she said that men and women are biologically different or whatever? And they go, oh, I'm so sorry, and I can't... And then it just goes on to this big hoo-ha, just from one person sending this 2-second tweet.
Lewis, you must have received complaints. How do you deal with them?
Well, this is an interesting story because basically I didn't realize that magazines still existed. And I mean, this is like a surprise to me, all these different things, because it's like I don't know if people buy magazines. And the second point is that WHSmith has the majority of the business of magazines. If you're going to go find a magazine, it's going to be in WHSmith, right? So that's the basic problem with this country, is just the intense centralization and coordination, and just everything is in. So they have a tremendous amount of power, WHSmith. If there was like lots of little stores that sold it, this wouldn't be a problem. And so I think what we have to do is we have to look at how this country, as Britain, I mean, is that we've let something like WHSmith get too much power.
You're saying we should put WHSmith into public ownership?
Do you want to know something? I think we need to just say, you know what, we're not going to make magazines anymore. We're going to figure another way.
And stop reading, I think, would be a good thing as well.
I don't think people do. People don't read magazines.
Do you really? Well, firstly,
I don't think that they do. Not in this country.
Of course they do.
No, they don't. They might read Hello Magazine or OK Magazine, but it's not like in America. And even in America, they don't read magazines anymore. Newsweek and Time and Life, and they were huge magazines in America. There were never those kind of magazines here. There's you talk about the Spectator, like that's a big publication. The largest single publication, I think, in this country is Private Eye. And it's not that huge. It's not a magazine reading country, so the guy's just a whinger.
On the issue of WHSmith having too much power, it's because we're not allowed to take fluids onto flights. This is my theory. The only reason WHSmith is still a thing is because they're the only shop where you can buy a bottle of water after you've gone through the bit where you have to throw all your water away. That's what they've got too much power.
That was it. When I went on holiday, it was I had to exactly that. Got rid of all that stuff, went straight to WHSmith, bought my copy of the European Conservative, and a bottle of water for the kids as well. And that's what's keeping them going.
Yeah, and then you read it. And
I was actually very angry. I was running around. I was going, where is the European Conservative?
Not anymore. Well, coming up on Free Speech Nation, I'm sure a lot of you have wondered what this country would be like if Josh Howie and Lewis Schaefer were Prime Minister. Felt that. But you're about to find out as we settle down for a game of You're the PM. Don't go away.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. We sometimes like to pit our panellists against each other, although Lewis normally sabotages that feature. So we're going to give it another go. Tonight, the guys get 60 seconds to say what they would do to improve the country if they became Prime Minister tomorrow. You never know, it could happen. And the audience will then rate their efforts. So first, we're going to start with Josh. How would you solve many of the problems?
OK, first of all, I would obviously hire someone much smarter than me, and I'd get Andrew, who's not here, he's still on holiday. I get Andrew Doyle. He could read all the stuff, because his genius is able to take all that, read all that really complicated stuff and simplify it so I could understand what is going on. So I'd first of all hire him. Secondly, I'd make being bald a protected characteristic. That's just straight up there. And then two serious things that I would do. Obviously, we have issues about, the cost of living and energy. Obviously, I'd get to that stuff. But I would genuinely, first of all, bring back Sure Start. Because I used to work when I was doing a proper job. One of them was working filing and in social services, and you see that it was the same families, generations on generations. And Sure Start really did make a difference in getting into actually dealing with these to stop that cycle continuing. And the other thing that I would do is I would make littering probably illegal in not death. But you would literally be given a bag and forced to then clean up litter for 3 hours or whatever it is. And I would go into schools and I would give them talks to say, please stop littering. It's really bad. When you get older, go to primary schools, get them when they're 5 and 6, and say people who litter are literally the scum of the earth, and please don't ever litter. And also teach boys that porn isn't real, and probably do that more 13. And also to respect women and don't wolf whistle and just deal with that stuff early.
And that's Josh Howie for PM, ladies and gentlemen. Before we find out what Prime Minister Louis Schaefer's going to say, if they're picking up litter, they're going to find porn. You can't...
Mate, you're in a different generation. They're not going to be finding phones.
They don't still have magazines?
They don't, and that's another thing I'd do. I'd bring back porn mags. Genuinely...
No one reads magazines in this country.
Well, that's first of all, it's killing two birds with one stone. Puts the nudity in the European Conservative. Then I'm sure that they'd stock it on the top shelf. But I genuinely think that way you would have much more control. I don't remember seeing crazy stuff that they see nowadays. They don't have the access. So ban all porn movie on the phone and stuff like that, and bring it all back to the good old days, the halcyon days of of finding porn in bushes.
Not the other way around. Well, let's find out. Louis Schaefer.
What good times.
There's no way you're going to be able to do this now.
Louis,
you're gone, aren't you?
leaving all that porn in bushes for me.
You're going to be focused elsewhere for the next 60 seconds, aren't you?
Okay, let's focus.
Yep.
First of all, I have a problem, which is I understand how the political system works in this country. So I know the Prime Minister can't do anything. Okay, it's a parliamentary system, and she's got to rely on all those people behind her. It's not like a presidential system where you could suddenly let, forgive student loans. The Prime Minister can't do that. So what I would do is I would take my 60 seconds and just tell the people that we, the Tory government, screwed up. And that we made a huge mistake over COVID, and that we got a little too excited. It was understandable. We were told it was the end of the world. So we basically blew out all the money that we had for the next 20 years, and that money's never coming back. And it's not a cost of living crisis, it's an inflation crisis because we've destroyed our currency. And there's nothing, and we're going to have to raise the interest rates in order to crush it. And as a price of raising the interest rates, people are going to lose their houses, and we're heading for incredibly bad, hard times for the next 5 or 10 years. And then I would resign.
I gotta be like, this is kind of unfair because we're meant to be improvising, and Lewis has just done his set. So,
I mean, I'm going to put it to the vote because you got a round of applause there, but I'm not sure if they clapped for what you said or for the fact you'd said you'd resign. It's difficult to know. Like, whew, misery guts over there leaves. OK, well, let's put it to the vote. Let's see who gets to be Prime Minister. If you would like Prime Minister Josh Howie, give me a round of applause. Prime Minister Louis Schaefer. So close, let's go for hung Parliament and no one does anything useful for one term.
I think Josh, as I said before, I should have said this in preface. Can we have another vote? I think Josh, he's got 5 kids that he has to support. I am a single dad. My kids are grown. I have no one. It's just me.
Yeah, exactly. I've got 5 kids, so I want to be at work, mate.
Yeah. So he needs to continue.
What's working?
I'm just saying they should vote for Josh.
Oh, I see.
Right. OK. You don't even have to resign that way, do you? Wow. Well, I think we found out that it's going to be Prime Minister Josh Howie. Congratulations on the job. Normally it makes you go like bald and grey, but we've both got a head start on that already. Brilliant. It's 8 o'clock in Free Speech Nation with me, Stephen Allen. Right, let's get some more questions from the audience. Our first question comes from Jackie.
Hi.
Hi.
Can I just ask, is the BBC impartial?
You can, because you do it into the microphone as well.
Oh, right.
Yeah? No, it's on. We're not just giving you the microphone as a prop. Is the BBC impartial? The BBC's new head of news, Deborah Turner, starts her job tomorrow. With the organisation's impartiality being questioned again, former Newsnight presenter Emily Maitlis recently claimed that the BBC board member Sir Robbie Gibb is an active agent of the Conservative Party. Radio 2 presenter Jeremy Vine, who's a keen cyclist, broke impartiality rules by supporting low-traffic neighbourhoods. And, of course, Liz Truss recently said that, unlike the BBC, GB News gets its facts right. Josh, your take on this? Do you currently still work for the BBC? In which
I don't work for the BBC anymore, so I can speak.
Yeah.
Look, I know there are people who watch the channel who think very much that the BBC should be defunded and all that other stuff. I think BBC gets a lot of stuff right. I think its news department, though, has been failing for a long time in terms of its partiality. I came on this channel and I talked about something that happened where the BBC basically called a bunch of Jewish kids Islamophobic or whatever, and they were proved wrong, and they listened to all the stuff, and experts came in, and the BBC still, and it's now Ofcom has it, and forget the fact I'm wearing a Star of David, but it was I think that was a disgraceful example of them using this impartiality of these Jewish kids being attacked in Oxford Street and still hasn't gone anywhere. They've got all that CCTV footage. They've never found out. They've never sort of arrested anybody. This is sort of 6-7 months ago, and the BBC came along and went, we can't just sort of say that this happened. We're going to have to also say that the kids did something to provoke it. And it turns out they hadn't. They were speaking Hebrew and they heard something wrong. So look, this is one little example of their desire to kind of come into these issues and go, wait a minute, we have to cover ourselves here. We need, rather than just being strong with it and just going, this is what happened. And I feel that there's a massive failing and there's a bravery failing in the BBC. Saying that, it takes, in terms of the whole trans debate, the BBC, but it wasn't BBC News that did this, but they did a great 10-part podcast about Stonewall, but it sort of came via the podcast department and whatever. That should have been coming from the news department. They should have been a lot braver on a lot of these issues a lot earlier, and they haven't, because people are scared of their jobs, and it's very frustrating. And that's why, when this channel, before I ever worked here, I was very excited that this channel was being created. I watched this particular show before I ever came on here, because there was a need for people to be a little bit braver and to talk about these issues that have seemingly just been swept aside or pretended they don't exist or whatever, and it's been really frustrating.
But one of the things the BBC struggles with, I suppose, is there will always be individual areas where they get it wrong, but the general aim might be the flaw. Because the cliche in journalism is that it's not the job of the journalist to have people debating both sides, whether it's, if the discussion is it raining or not, you don't have someone on to say yes, someone on to say no. Yeah. You look out the window and say if it's raining. That's the cliche. And it works for rain, but it doesn't work for everything else. Because if we apply it to what we were talking about a few guests ago, about what's happening with lockdowns, then you could make the same argument of, well, the World Health Organization has said this, therefore let's shut down debate. We don't need to have the opposing view for everything, which is one of Emily Maitlis's complaints. And one of your complaints about the idea of trying obsessively to bring balance, they might bring the incorrect side in as well. But how do you know which are the incorrect sides that you bring?
Well, then it's down to the producers and people doing their jobs better, because they had like a trans debate finally on Women's Hour, and they invited to present the putting forward the trans ideology was a trans woman who, it turns out, was celebrating on, she's a fighter, like a mixed martial fighter, whatever, and celebrating smashing biological women's faces in and stuff. And this is who they brought in, because they just didn't do that extra little bit of research. I know that everybody can have these failings. This is a human... People who work at these organisations, including this organisation, we're human beings, and everybody's rushing around, everyone's doing 10,000 things at once, and there are things that are going to slip through. But at the same time, there's a problem with where, you know, in the same, when they were representing, talking about the Corbyn anti-Semitic debate in Labour, and they would always bring on these one or two token people as though they were representative. And they weren't. And if they looked into what these people actually said, like disgusting things, you're like, how are you getting this person on? There are so many other better people to talk about this particular issue. So, it's frustrating.
Yeah. As a yes or a no. I can't remember what the question was.
I don't know either, but
whatever it was a yes.
I'm just glad that there is a wider dialogue now. Yeah. And I do think genuinely that GB News adds positively to the debate, in that there is a debate for certain things now. I'm not saying that everything gets right or wrong. I'm just saying now there does seem to be things that we're talking about that we wouldn't necessarily talk about before.
And Louis Schaefer, the BBC, I imagine, have they ever paid you dirty money to be a comedian on the BBC?
Well, I hope after what I say right now, they had paid me money. No, I mean, I think you guys are like totally wrong. People are not unbiased or neutral. We all have an opinion. Each one of us has an opinion. Groups of people have opinions. Organizations have opinions. You cannot say to an organization like the BBC that you cannot have an opinion, that you must be neutral. It's impossible to police. It's impossible to make right. So you could sit there, Josh, and be like, oh, I'm so frustrated, I'm so angry, blah, blah, blah. But the truth is, it's always going to exist that way. The BBC has taken controls, perhaps 60 to 70% of all the news that people get in this country, okay? That's a tremendous amount. That means only 30% is left for the rest of us.
But isn't that why they should at least be aiming to not be biased?
It doesn't matter how much they aim. They're human beings. They're an organization. The fact is, the BBC destroys democracy. It destroys openness. You know what? I'm not British, but I think it's this. I don't know whether it's the first or the second worst thing about this country is a state-owned broadcaster, which controls so much space that obviously left-wing people are upset about the BBC and right-wing people are upset about the BBC. Yet the issues get forced on us because the powers that be have control of the BBC. It doesn't matter.
Turn down your Radio 4 special. Is that what happened?
What you need to do is, I think this country would be a better country without a state-owned broadcaster. I think the BBC must it shouldn't exist. And as long as it exists, you're going to have these questions.
Well, our next question is from Bharat.
Should Hooters restaurant be allowed to sponsor a kids' football team?
Should Hooters restaurant be allowed to sponsor a kids' football team? Questions you never thought you'd have to answer. So the Football Association says that an under-10s team cannot go ahead with its sponsorship deal with Hooters restaurant chain. Hooters is perhaps best known for, we're all worried, aren't we? But what I'm going to say here, but staff being women wearing revealing outfits is the way they phrased it. OK. The sponsorship deal was announced last week, but a string of complaints, the FA has stepped in. Are you, do you have a loyalty card there?
Well, it's interesting because that football team that was sponsored by them is my football team.
But it is now.
It is now, yeah. The fact is that look at the Premier League. Look who sponsors the Premier League. Look at Red Bull. They're one of those evil organizations ever with their diabetes, uric acid raising, caffeine killing.
The internet says there's nothing to confirm the claims that...
nothing to confirm, only that sugar is deadly, and Red Bull has sugar, and sugar is combined with its glucose, which raises your insulin levels and gives you cancer, and fructose, which causes rises in uric acid, which is also...
But it gives you energy, and it's great for football.
Yeah. And also, in fairness, Hooters sells things with sugar in it, so I feel like that's... You know, that some of their desserts are actually...
Every single team is sponsored by people that are horrific. The fact is that Walker's chips, which is death food, salt, sugar, glucose, the thing is deadly. It's causing a diabetes epidemic in this country, and it sponsors a football team. You know, I mean, one more point. My own football team, which is Crystal Palace. They've got pretty girls basically dressed in very tight, skimpy outfits coming out before the games, dancing around. And kids see that, and should kids be allowed to see that?
Wow, so I think, Louis, you're banning everything from sponsoring anything.
What I'm saying is that basically... Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Josh, Lewis has banned football, WHSmiths.
No, football.
Being a prime minister.
No. Football is good.
Okay.
Football is the best thing about this country.
Yeah.
Is football. Relegation and promotion is what makes football the best thing about this country. So don't ever say a bad word about British football.
But you can have a go at Hooters all you like.
Okay. Red Bull. Yeah. It doesn't seem particularly appropriate. Obviously, I don't know why they would want to. Surely there are other local football teams that they should. I mean, it goes back to what we were talking about, the sexualisation with children. I just don't. It's not necessarily what we would call a good match. Yeah. Some parents have said, look, it's hard to raise money, so why don't you put in the money? Well, I hate football, actually, so I wouldn't. But maybe a more appropriate, fit, maybe the women's football team.
Can I say something? I think what it is, if it gets more dads to participate in their son's team, to get them to go to the game. Sometimes you don't want to go to the game. It's so boring. It's on a Sunday. You don't want to be at the kids' game. But if it gets the kids to go to the games...
But they're only sponsoring it. I don't think they're sending down the waitresses. I don't know. But
well, they might show up occasionally to get the business.
The little orange slices at half-time. Like, all of a sudden I'm thirsty. Kind of... OK, well, while we have that mental image, let's move on to our next question, which is from Alan.
Hi, should 3-year-olds be given sex education lessons?
Should 3-year-olds be given sex education lessons? Parents with children at a primary school in Wales have lost their legal challenge, which would have stopped a new curriculum coming in. These parents were concerned about children as young as 3 learning about gender identity and sex in new relationships and sexuality curriculum. A judge said that there was no evidence that the lessons would cause, and here's the quote, irreparable harm to the pupils. Josh, I know you're passionate on these kind of issues.
I am passionate about this. I mean, I think it's a big mistake to get Hooters to teach sex education in Wales.
You'd learn some stuff you don't learn till later.
Yeah. But they saying 3, I read that it was more like it was 7, even then. And then there are teaching about, like, basic biology, teaching that families come in different shapes and sizes, and, that's great. I don't see any problem with that. The issue that I have is this gender ideology thing, which is an ideology. It isn't, families do come in different shapes, and that's great. That's a fact. And people do have sex. That's a fact. There's a way of teaching it, of course, but this idea that we all have an innate gender and there's 1,000 different genders and all that stuff, and teaching that, and the gingerbread man, and they've been proven that they have been teaching that in schools, and these groups have been going in there over the last 5-6 years and teaching just rubbish, lies to little kids.
But if your argument for the first part is that you're going to go through life when you're older than 3, you will see that families are different, so you might as well learn that families are different. Well, you're also going to go through life and possibly meet someone who has an issue.
But that's cool. That's a scientific condition that's called gender dysmorphia.
But there will be people that you might not think should be having the reason to claim their pronouns. What I'm saying is you would still come across people who identify as gender.
I'm not saying that you can't teach that there are people out there who think that they are whatever. That's different. But teaching things as fact that we all have this innate gender identity, and there's a they, them, and all the other ridiculous pronouns that have sort of seemingly been created. That is an ideology. That isn't a fact.
But would you then have to teach the kids that other people think this ideology? If what you're saying is you're preparing kids because what you might meet in the real world, then you don't trim out things from...
All right, so I'd say, there's a bunch... By the way, kids, there's a bunch of people out there who are actually kind of boring, so they've created a they-them identity to thus seem like they're actually really fascinating people.
Because being vegans was full.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, I believe you can actually be both. Most likely. So that's... The issues I have are when these things, like I say, are presented as fact. But of course, you're teaching people that there is a diversity of expression. Great. But that's not what they seem to, or they certainly historically have not been teaching that. That's not what they've been saying. They've been saying, hey, actually, men and women, and it's actually very reductive about what men and women are in terms of, if you play with, if you like the colour pink and whatever, then that means you're a girl, you have a girl brain. And this stuff is like 100 years old.
Yeah. Lewis, what's your take on this?
My take on it, as I say every single time I'm ever anywhere, is this is the death of love. It's one more way that they're trying to get families to stop being families, to stop having children, to inculcate children not to have families and not to have kids and not to get married and not to fall in love. And it's the powers that be, these rich people. They don't want people to have children. They don't want us to form strong bonds have children with our wives and husbands and families and grandparents. They don't want us to be a community, to be a tribe. They want us to be totally malleable. They don't need us anymore. They can import a fully grown adult from any country in the world. They don't need you to have a child that you're going to raise, that we have to educate and spend money in Wales to educate. I mean, I know the people that are doing this probably aren't thinking this way, but that's what's happening. It's every single one of these stories. They're all the same. They don't want us. You, Josh, have broken the mold. You've done something that's shocking by have 5 children. But today's kids, nobody's having kids. Nobody is having kids. They don't want us to have kids. So as an act of protest, fall in love and have a child.
That is the best chat-up line I have ever seen. And our final question is from Tim.
Should a dad give his 2 children similar names?
This is an interesting one. Should a dad give 2 children similar names? This is after a mum is now unhappy that her ex gave a new baby a similar name to the one that they'd had together. Her and her ex had an 11-year-old son called Barnaby, and the father has now called the new baby Barney. The mum posted on, of course, Mumsnet. Many respondents felt the same as she did, that this is insensitive. Would you do this? Come on, you do. I know you well enough. That would be exactly the best way to troll an ex.
Do you want to know something? This is one of the saddest stories I've ever seen. First of all, it's not even a story. It's like some imaginary person wrote to Mumsnet and then the paper printed it like it was a fact. They didn't even ask, they didn't interview anybody, they didn't prove it happened. But it's basically a guy who was separated from his child. his child named Barnaby, this child is calling another man daddy. Okay? So he's lost his kid. His kid has basically died to him. What do parents do? They name their next kid the same name as the kid that... I mean, I'm not saying it's the right thing to do. It's a tragic thing, but that's what you do when your child dies. A lot of parents, they name the kid the same name because they want a replacement for that. And that's what this story is about. It's about this mother's complaining after... I'm not saying maybe she didn't throw the guy out, but she has another man calling this guy's child daddy. That's a Hank Williams song. If you know Hank Williams, there's country tragedy there. It's just tragedy.
Okay. I don't... What this story is actually about is how stupid men can be and just totally ignorant. And basically, yes, it's sad that they're broken up. We don't know who broke up with who exactly. He may well have left her. It sounds like he's not been actively involved. That's a choice that he has made.
Not necessarily.
You have a choice.
Totally.
Whatever.
You've never gone through a divorce. You've never been in a horrible situation.
Okay, you've been through that many times.
You've dodged.
Mr. Save the Family and Fall in Love in here. How many divorces?
But you know what it is? At the end, the statistics are in, is that most of... I'm not blaming women for this, because it's both... The whole society is geared...
You are blaming your ex.
No, she's horrible. But women generally, the whole society is based on splitting people up. And so families get split up. And when they get split up...
It sounds to me like you're not taking much responsibility for your divorce.
Do you want to know something? At the time, I took responsibility, and I still take responsibility. But society, when all what they call all the cash and prizes go to someone who gets divorced, they get the children, they get the money from the state, and you're considered a loser. I mean, she knew what she was getting into when she married me. Every single person here knows what they're getting into. You don't see any of these women being interested in Louis Schaefer. So she should have taken responsibility. I'm not blaming her. She's a lovely woman, my ex-wife, that my kids have turned out all right.
Yeah. No, you've got wonderful kids. I met them a few weeks ago, and they said, please, can I call you Dad?
I told him to say that, to get money out of the guy.
My point is, what this story is really about is the fact that the dad, the ex, went up and said, I can't believe you're calling your new baby Barney. Don't you think that's similar to Barnaby? He went, oh, yeah. I hadn't really thought of that before, but we've called him the kid now, so that's what it is. That's what the story is really about. It's just a guy just being...
No, because you know what it is? This is the thing about you, Josh. You're one of the most conservative people with a small c. It's like you're just taking it at face value. There's so much pathos and depth to these stories. It's not, you can't treat it that way.
A second ago, you weren't even saying this was a story. You're like, oh, this is something from months
But as a story, as a bit of novel, there's the pain. You can see the pain that this guy had. And I can see the pain the woman has, because she's thinking, you know what I mean? Maybe she's not happy with her new husband, and she's thinking, I made a mistake, because my ex has a new wife, and she hasn't let herself go. And
you're writing a lot of
fan fiction going on here.
It's the death of love. In this story, it just reeks, is that they let people get... I'm against divorce now. I'm against child support payments. I'm against... I'm saying, let's just stay married. Stay married.
The second best Jacid line I've ever heard.
Your husband's horrible. You know? You don't see it yet. You just got married, Stephen. Everything's nice and rosy. You have a kid.
Am I going to turn into you in the future?
Do you want to know something? The way things are going, there's probably a 70-80% chance. I hate to say it, yes. Yeah, you will turn into me. You'll say, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
I'm so excited you're going to get your hair back.
Wow. Lose everything else in the divorce, though.
She'll find somebody who's maybe he's got a job on the BBC. And they say, he's got a job on the BBC. This guy, my husband, he doesn't support me that well, is the way I'm used to. He doesn't take me to Crete.
You literally fill in the blanks in absolutely everything, don't you? It must be exhausting.
It's so predictable. Every one of these women, they know, here's a woman, she trophy wife divorced her husband, broke the guy's heart. You can see the trail of bitterness that she's left behind. Just the women. This woman here, she looks lovely. Evil. Just completely evil. The nicer they look, the more you know they destroyed
We will
I still do her, but I don't.
It's Derek Akora's back. Yeah, we'll be doing more cold readings after the break, but we'll also be finding out about the Tory party membership have cast their votes, and tomorrow we will learn the identity of our next Prime Minister. A former advisor to Theresa May and Michael Gove will be here to tell us exactly what to expect.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. The votes have been cast and it's almost time to reveal the winner of the Tory leadership race. We should get Dermot O'Leary to do it. We all have suspicions about who it could be, but nothing can be certain, I suppose, until the name's read out. Well, joining me in the studio is someone with insider knowledge, a former special advisor to Theresa May and Michael Gove. It's Charlie Rowley. Is it Rowley or Rowley? Am I getting...
I've heard worse in either sense, so Rowley is fine.
Rowley, I'm glad we got that right. Thanks for joining me, Charlie, and now I know your surname properly. I feel like we're best friends. I mean, you've been there. You've been there at the coalface of what it's like. What is about to happen? I mean, I know as a pundit, this is the worst gig. I'm asking you to do predicting, which is normally the question at the end of the interview where people hate answering it. But it's the whole interview. Tell us what you think is going to be happening, what will be happening next, and I suppose, do we stand a chance of any of this helping us out with all the crises coming down the pipe?
Well, the first thing to say is that we've had 6 or 7 weeks of this leadership election that I think has gone on for far too long. I think everybody's glad that it has now come to an end.
Yeah,
But I think nothing is certain, even though all the pundits and all the predictions and all the column inches are filled with the fact that it's going to be Liz Truss. And I'm not a betting man, but if you were going to bet, it probably would be a safe one. But the polls have been wrong before. I go back all the way back to 2015, where it could have been another coalition government. In 2016, we were going to remain in the European Union. In 2017, Theresa was going to get a thumping majority, and in 2019, it could have been touch or go whether it was going to be Jeremy Corbyn as the next Prime Minister. So nothing is for certain. It could still be Rishi. I'm sure that's what he'll be going home tonight and still and hoping and maybe modelling a cabinet if it were going to come to pass. But
he'll be playing that clip of you saying that to himself on loop.
Well, I think anything can happen, but it does look like it's going to be Liz tomorrow. There'll be an announcement at 12:30. tomorrow afternoon by Sir Graham Brady, the chair of the 1922 committee. He'll come out and tell everybody what we've been all longing to hear for far too long. And that will set the train in motion. The Prime Minister will, Boris Johnson will then, on the Tuesday, have to go to Balmoral. He'll have to see the Queen to formally hand in his resignation. And once that's complete, the new Prime Minister will be flown up to Balmoral as well to kiss the hands of the Queen. That's the official ceremony. And they will become the new Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
Now, when that happens, will there be a price to pay for such a relatively painful battle? I mean, it's been a battle that almost felt like we didn't need to witness it. I'm sure they could have just emailed the people who get a vote on this and we all could have been spared it. But there's been a certain level of chunks taken out of each other, and they all need to now be friends going forwards.
Well, all families row and have their differences, and we are one big, happy Conservative family. I'm sure we'll all come back together at the end of it and get behind whoever wins. Because that's what the party has to do. You know, I can't remember a time where, apart from Theresa, potentially, where a new incumbent has got such a difficult entry and very little time. You know, it will be 2 years to go until the next general election, so whoever wins is going to have to not only unite the party that has had its divisions, that's had its different ways of setting out how they're going to deal with the cost of living crisis, how they're going to tackle the issues with energy prices that are increasing, dealing with inflation, all of these other issues that will come up. So difficult decisions are going to have to be taken. The individual will have to bring the party together and bring the country with them in order to go into that next election, knowing that we've tackled some of these big issues and go and win another fifth historic general election for the Conservative Party.
Another one of the divisions that's happened is about the way in which the last guy was dumped. Because that still seems to be lingering. Like, is Rishi the one who's stabbed in the back? Will there be prices to pay for that? I mean, Boris won't be in a position to actually make people pay for it, but will Liz Truss be punishing those who are seen to be the people who unseated Boris?
Well, it's incredibly tempting, isn't it? When you become if you become the next Prime Minister, or if you're in a position of power, and you know, after a gruelling 6 or 7 weeks of going through this leadership election, it's very tempting then to just appoint your friends and your supporters and your early backers. I think, given the time between now and the next election and the absolute need to bring the party together, you're going to have to reach out to everybody. People that voted for Rishi, people that would have backed Tom Tugendhat right at the very start. Because it's a broad church, the Conservative Party, and in order to, as I say, bring the whole party together, you're going to have to reach out to everybody.
So, presuming that happens, presuming that we can heal the wounds, the intro, as you say, is ridiculously painful. Will the nation, in some way, resent how long we've been dilly-dallying with this when we should have been fixing the problems? Because at some point we're going to be paying some bills and not being able to afford things. Maybe it could have been sorted out a bit quicker if we would have started to get some policies brought in rather than saving them, so you can get a nice bounce. So look, I'm the new Prime Minister and here's the saving rule that we could have introduced this before, but no, we made it just so that they look better in the polls and we pay more for it. That's costly, isn't it?
Well, look, I mean, hindsight's a wonderful thing in politics all the time. And, it could be argued that the two candidates that were running to be the next leader of the party and who will ever go on to be the Prime Minister could have got together with the current Prime Minister, could have had a bigger meeting of officials, of experts to map out and actually, for the candidates for themselves to actually see the depth of the challenge that we face. Because I know Liz has said previously that she would want to wait until she gets into number 10 to then see the depth of the challenge. It might have been an idea had they come together and agreed a plan earlier on to allow other debates to flourish. So what are the candidates going to do on crime, on education, on the NHS, on free speech? We haven't heard enough about that because the whole contest has been dominated by the cost of living and energy prices. And so that could have been something that could have taken place. It didn't. So we are where we are. And whoever becomes the Prime Minister tomorrow, or announced tomorrow, and takes their office on Tuesday, we will then just have to wait and see what happens after that.
So it might be Liz Truss, we know this much, right? I don't think it's too unkind to say, let's focus maybe on the Liz Truss angle a little bit. If I'm wrong, I'll apologise to Rishi afterwards. What do you think she will do? What do you think she can do? What are the next steps?
The very first thing is to appoint a cabinet. She will have a plethora of supporters, as I say, people that probably backed her. She should reach out to other people that didn't. But she has announced previously that she's going to be a tax-cutting Conservative. So you can assume that things like VAT on bills is going to be reduced. energy levies on the energy sector reduced. There may be additional support, which was originally ruled out, if you remember, at the start of the contest. She said no handouts. But I think when you explore the depth of the challenge, you need to ensure that actually that there is a package of support available to those that are most in need. So where tax cuts might not help those on the lowest income and pensioners that obviously don't have an income to be taxed, those people will be in a very, very vulnerable position over winter, and they will need additional financial support. So we can see a combination probably of tax cuts and better financial support to those in need.
Do you think anyone will be holding her to account for the small changes, not huge changes? Well, I know newspapers might use the phrase U-turn, but I suppose it's not huge. But in the fact that you gain points by saying no handouts, what a strong, powerful sentence to say that will gain you some support. And then you get in and you do some handouts. Will she be held to account for that, or actually is she just played an absolute blinder, playing the room that she needs to play?
Well, there was the Daily Mail editorial today had a brilliant piece, I think, which sort of said that you can campaign in theory, but you have to govern in reality. And so, yes, it is a small membership in comparison to the wider population of those who've had a vote in this contest, and it is very appealing hearing about tax cuts, and it's very appealing about making sure that you have more money in your pockets, that you work hard, if you play by the rules, and if you do the right thing, you keep more money that you earn. That is a conservative principle. That's why I'm a conservative. Yes, that is a great theory, but if you get into number 10 and you get to explore the books that are on in the Treasury desks, and you see the scale of the challenge that faces us, it may be that you then need to go to the public and say, look, this is what I believe in. I ultimately feel this, and that is why I've said it during the leadership election. But the country, as a response to help the whole of the United Kingdom, we may need to do things a little bit differently to get through the challenges that face us immediately, and then come back and make those tax cuts and those pledges that she did at the very start of the campaign.
And how long do you think it will be until there's the first scandal?
What day is it now?
Surely it won't be as fast and furious as we've had recently.
I hope not. I mean, there are we've got a number of issues to sort out, whether that's the Standards and Privileges Committee with Boris and what he said in Parliament, whether he misled Parliament or not. That will come and go. There'll be other issues in other constituencies, I'm sure. There always are, but they're in every party, so it's not exclusive. I think what people will really want us to focus on are just the issues of the day. So the cost of living, the energy crisis, and things that are going to just come up naturally, It may be the case that you see an increase in public disorder. We've still got the war in Ukraine. That we're still sort of supporting out there. So there are a number of issues that we just need to get on with, and I think that's what the public will really want us to focus on.
And we know that it won't be wallpaper, it's going to be a brave new world. Charlie, thank you very much. That's Charlie Rowley, former Special Advisor to Theresa May and Michael. Well, after the break, as you may have gathered, we think that free speech is rather important, and one of the many areas it matters in is the workplace. So, people who are abused or harassed at work, do they feel safe in speaking up? A top employment lawyer will be here to tell us more about this.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
On Mark Dolan Tonight, it's our new Prime Minister special, with Liz Truss expected to win the keys to number 10 tomorrow. In the big question, can she win the next general election? I'll be asking Anne Widdecombe, Edwina Currie and Vince Cable. Plus the political editor of the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson, Neil and Christine Hamilton live in the studio, and the brilliant commentator Sam Dowler. And in my big opinion, my manifesto for our new PM. In Liz, we must all trust. That's our new Prime Minister special, tonight at 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Westminster has been rocked this weekend by further allegations of sexual impropriety. The Sky News, they've been publishing accounts by two women who claim one was assaulted, the other was groped by political figures who now hold senior roles in government. These further allegations highlight the importance of legalisation, which allows victims of workplace harassment to speak out. Here to discuss this, I'm pleased to say we're joined by Joe Mackey, Principal Lawyer and Head of Employment Law Team at Slater and Gordon. Thanks for joining us. So, I mean, it seems different for us because we're talking about Westminster, but would these new Westminster allegations constitute sexual misconduct?
Yeah, if they're true, then probably yes. The problem is that I think that what's happened with Westminster is you've seen the Chris Pincher debacle, where Boris Johnson allegedly knew, or has admitted that he knew, allegations about Pincher existed and then still made him Deputy Chief Whip. So what surprised me most is that people have come forward, given that's the history of the workplace they're dealing with in the Houses of Parliament.
So you think that story actually, if anything, would have silenced more whistleblowers, I suppose because they presume there's no good outcome, but at least talking about these things, showing that these issues are there, normally is what we're told we should be raising the profile of that so that more people open up about things.
That's the thing. I think you're absolutely right. And I would encourage women and men who feel that they've had some kind of violation at work, some harassment, which is just unwanted conduct that makes you feel intimidated, or it's intended to make you feel intimidated, it's hostile, degrading. I'd encourage you to speak up, because the law exists and the law has teeth. The problem is we don't enforce it or use it very well in this country. And in the background of that is if you look at what happens in criminal law, it's like less than 1% of reported rapes, and that's just reported rapes, result in conviction. So we're not doing something here, but I do think it's time that we spoke up and stood up for ourselves. I mean, there's some levels of behaviour you wouldn't want your wife, your daughter, your sister, your son to have to go through, and it's time we spoke up and defended people and made a case for using the law that exists.
So you say the law has teeth, and I take the point, but when you look at the outcomes, that seems to be a reason why many people might keep their mouths shut, but also a lack of knowledge of what the law is. I'm not sure we're incredibly well informed about what our rights are in the workplace.
You're absolutely right. And I think that's part of a background where people don't really want to rock the boat. You don't want to be labelled a troublemaker, but the law is really powerful. The Equality Act is a fantastic piece of legislation. It's been here since 2010. It makes harassment, victimisation illegal, and if anything happens to you at work and you lose your job as a result, it could well be just unlawful dismissal, which is a huge penalty on an employer. You've got things like the Public Interest Disclosure Act, which is a fantastic piece of legislation again, which says that if you want to report something that's a danger to your health or your safety, then any victimisation of you is automatically an offence. The law is here to protect you, but I agree with you. I don't think people know, and I think that's because that you see things that they're almost unbelievable, like the murder of Sarah Everard. And you kind of, I think a lot of people have lost trust in what society has to protect us. But I think going back to the Chris Pincher thing, somebody did speak up, and it actually, you know, I think it contributed to the downfall of Boris Johnson in the end, because so many of his own MPs were horrified that he let that guy go through whilst knowing those accusations were there, and there was no investigation. It's all very well saying, well, we've got these codes of conduct and rules of behaviour in Parliament. If you don't use them, if you don't be brave enough to rock the boat and to take a stand, there's no point in having them there. You have to use them.
And I suppose that story and maybe the attitude in society anyway. I know it almost feels like I shouldn't say this bit out loud because it's the opposite of raising the good profile. But loads of people think secretly in the back of their head, yep, you can list all the laws and details you want, but at some point you will be punished for speaking up. Even if the law is in place to stop that happening, we fear that those in power will still find a way of doing it.
And you're right, and I think that's what you see. But I think a lot of people don't realise, as you said, quite rightly, Steve, what the law is there to do. And my team, other employment lawyers, we win cases all the time. And we win, you know, you get financial remedy for sexual harassment in the workplace. It's also a criminal offence. What you need sometimes when you've been through this kind of experience and it's worn you down is somebody on your side to fight your corner. And that's where you need somebody. If it's not the police and it's not, you don't think it's sufficient for a criminal offence, just get some advice. A lot of lawyers or people like victim support will give you free advice just to say whether or not you think on balance there's something you could take forward, and they will take it forward for you. You know, it's not, you don't have to fight this on your own. There are other people who are willing to take this fight on for you, and it's important to know that.
Yeah, it's another thing that I suppose we don't know. We don't have the info in our heads when we're making the decisions, not only the details of the law, but the support network, I suppose. Because it feels like the kind of battle that would be draining, and people make that choice in their head. Where do you want to spend your energy? Do you want to try and fight the battle, or would you find a different way around it? I suppose, do we have too many people finding other ways around of it, not facing it front on?
I think people just think, oh, well, you know, this is part of what usually happens at work, I'll put up with it. But hopefully, my daughter, for example, I don't think she would do that. And my mum would have done. And I think it's a generational thing, maybe. Women particularly are starting to find it's okay to stand up and speak up. And the law is in their favour. And there's people like me, and there's lots of us about, who will stand and fight your corner for you. And it's really important. And I think as the Chris Pincher case, I keep going back to it, but I think it's a really important turning point. Because a lot of MPs stood up and were counted there. A lot of people who stood to lose their jobs, or who were going to be troublemakers or rock the boat, and, you know, whoever the next PM is, maybe it's Liz Truss, and it's likely to be Liz Truss, you know, they're risking their reputation. Are they saying they're going to be a troublemaker if they're standing up and saying this wasn't right? They still did it, and I applaud that. I think that was a great thing that they did. And what I would encourage everybody who's watching, who's had this kind of experience, to consider is you're not on your own. The law's on your side. People like me are on your side. But, you know, the MP stood up and were counted. That's a good thing.
And it is the ultimate in free speech issues, I suppose. Joe, thank you very much for that. That's Joe Mackey, principal lawyer at Slater and Gordon. Now, moving on, because time's getting on, and every week we dedicate the next part of the show to the world of social media and the stories that have got people talking. First up, Boris Johnson, you may have mentioned him a few times tonight, demonstrated his flair for bargain hunting when his Downing Street flat was redecorated at the cost of just £112,000. This week, the outgoing PM offered some invaluable saving tips to a grateful nation.
If you have an old kettle that takes ages to boil, it may cost you £20 to replace it. But if you get a new one, you'll save £10 a year for every year on your £10 a year every year on your electricity bill.
Now, look, I know he's had a lot of flack on social media for that, but he's saying if you buy a kettle, it will save you £10 a year against your £1,000 energy bill. But that's every year, so you will pay off that £1,000 energy bill in 100 years. But maybe he didn't mean that. Maybe it means it's £10 per kettle. So if you simply buy 1,000 kettles, then you will have dropped 20k on it, and somehow you'll make it. Josh, what's your thoughts?
You know what? This is painful defending Boris. But I got to do it, man. That clip was taken out of context. He's talking about a wide issue. He's talking about nuclear power. And so it seems very unfair, and it is indicative of what we are now, that we are seeing everything on screen. And, oh, look, we saw this 20-minute gotcha clip. Unfortunately, that is one of those circumstances that he was making a wider analogy here, and it is unfair to say that that's his idea. I don't think he is particularly caring about the people who are going to be finding themselves and already are in extreme financial difficulty because of what's going on. So, but, there is a truism there, but in this particular case, it's unfair.
So you're saying you love Boris Johnson and you wish he was still Prime Minister forever?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
You got me. I've got to pay off my holiday somehow.
You should buy more kettles. Honestly, the more you buy,
what I did.
It's £10 every time, and it costs you 20 quid to make it. Lewis, surely you love the Boris Johnson?
I look at the clip and I think to myself, he's like the Lib Dems or magazines. I mean, is that guy still around?
How old's your kettle?
Well, the interesting thing is, I've been watching a lot of videos about kettles in America, and Americans don't have kettles. They put a little pot, they put like a whistling pot on a flame and boil it on the flame.
They just hold a gun at it and say, no, freeze would make it worse.
Right.
Yeah.
No, my kettle is, it's a Russell Hobbs, and it's actually quite good.
That's the most positive thing I've heard Lewis say all night.
Next
Russell
up.
Knobs, not cancelled. Okay. Russell Hobbs.
Your search history is now a worry.
I must have a knockoff. I've got the Russell Knobs.
Next up, it's Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, who has asked for her opinion on PM candidate Liz Truss on Sky News. To the surprise of all, she's not that optimistic.
She governs as she has campaigned over the summer. She will be a disaster, not just for Scotland, but for all of the UK. She has campaigned on the very, how can I say this politely, niche priorities of 100,000 members of the Conservative Party.
No, a niche approach to politics.
Hypocrisy there, yeah. Isn't that her whole gamut? That's what she does, is niche politics of her. I don't know how many people in Scotland.
5 million.
12 people?
It's 5 million, but I think it used to be 2.5 million people use the tube every day. So 2 days' worth of tube users is an entire Scotland.
Yeah, wow, that's going to endear you to them.
And £20 off a kettle will save you. No, but I take the point that, she makes a career out of doing... niche politics is harsh, but if she started using that phrase, then I guess we can continue using it. But do you think Liz Truss was going niche, just playing to those Tory voters, Tory members?
Well, yeah, I think, that's what politicians do, isn't they? They say what they need to say when they need to say it. Whether she can now sort of broaden her message, on evidence of what I've seen this morning and a very sort of, with 3 hours sleep, being interviewed, no, is the answer. And I don't feel like she's like turning, pivoting to kind of go, the votes are already in, pretty much.
Yeah.
So I feel like this morning would have been a good opportunity for her on the Laura Cuthbert interview or whatever to then start speaking a bit wider and sort of widening her appeal. I don't think she did that. I think that was a big mistake.
And are you happy about what's going to happen? I mean, presuming it's Liz Truss, is she your candidate, Lewis?
No, I think she's destined for failure. And the fact is that Boris Johnson at least had a little bit of a personality, even though he was completely bonkers. You say bonkers? No. He was wrong. And what he did was he basically sold the entire country down to get Brexit through, which he didn't even believe in. So he was a horrible person, Boris Johnson. These two, they are like nothings, and maybe they'll rise up to it. We need greatness right now. We're at the precipice. We've spent all the money. We have no money. We're at the edge of war all around the world. We need greatness. Perhaps one of these people will step up.
Russell Hobbs?
And finally, a shortage of pilots has prompted airlines to adopt a new radical plan. I mean, I'm not sure who to go to discuss this clip first. An actual dogfight. What's your take, Lewis?
I say it's a great parents who put that in the backyard for their kid and for their dog too. I mean, isn't that what that is? That's in somebody's backyard. They've got some kind of
No, that's real. It's a real dog flying a plane.
They've already been into space. This is nothing for them.
I didn't see this clip. I'm a little unprepared myself.
Why don't they shoot in landscape? That's what annoys me more.
The modern day world. Well, now to Unfiltered Dilemmas, where you tell us the problems and we are here to solve them. Our first dilemma is from Alan in Oxfordshire. I keep beating my mates and even my son at golf, but I'm doing it by cheating. What should I do to make it up to them?
Well, first of all, Alan's a massive racist for playing golf.
Yeah.
As I think we've covered. Yeah, cheating to try and beat your son, that's terrible behaviour there. That's like that. What's that, Dad?
Competitive dad in the
competitive dad, yeah. Why would you do... I mean, I play a lot of board games, that's my hobby. And when people cheat, like, I've never had anyone cheat because that's the whole point of it. Like, you want to have this fair competition. And then someone said, oh, after this game, they're like, oh, I cheated, isn't that funny? And I was so angry. I can't be friends with this person anymore because that defies the whole point of competition, is to try yourself. And when you find that you're doing it against someone who's cheated, this guy's a bad guy, man. And
So
he shouldn't
now-
name his kid Barnaby.
And now I'm guessing you're playing board games on your own quite a lot these days.
I do play solo board games, yes.
And what should he do to make... He's playing golf, but he's cheating. I don't know how he's doing it. Golf ball out of the trouser leg into the hole.
Well, it takes a lot of energy to cheat, and it takes a lot of intelligence to cheat, and maybe he's teaching his kid to cheat. I think in this world, I think the cheaters, as you could in life, get... I mean, I cheated against my children because they love their mother more.
Our second dilemma is from Caroline in Surrey. One of my best friends has told me an amazing secret about himself. I'm a massive gossip, and I want to tell the world. Should I? What would you do, Lewis? What's the advice?
Well, if I were a woman, I would tell everyone because I'm a woman. But...
It's like you want the hate tweets. You've got nothing else to do later.
I just think, what do you do? Of course you don't, but she's going to. Is it a she?
It's a Caroline.
Yeah.
Yeah, but why is her best friend a man? That's not true.
It's doable.
No, I've seen When Harry Met Sally.
Yeah.
I've only watched half of it. Don't ruin it for me. It seems great so far.
Yeah, but also, how dare she come on, this show via messages and not tell us what the actual secret is? That's the frustrating thing.
Anyone who's got like a really embarrassing secret and a friend called Caroline is sweating right now. Oh, I shouldn't have done it. On to the next one then. Our final dilemma is from James, who sent us this email. My unfiltered dilemma is that I'd like to be in the audience, but I'm too young. What should I do?
Grow up.
I'll get you there eventually.
Is there really an age limit here? No.
There should be.
No.
What, to be this close to Lewis? If there's not an age limit, there's a 50-yard limit. So what would you advise?
Of course we should let him in if he's a fat, but his parents are at home. I let my kids watch this show. Yeah, I'll bring them down to the studio once.
You want a 2-year-old baby? Haven't we? You don't want to. You want a 1-year-old, 5-year-old. You don't want that. And I think, frankly, I agree with you about seeing me. There's something about me that children they don't need to see.
That's what you told your kids.
Women enjoy it. They think, thank God I'm not with that guy. And, and men are thinking, thank God I'm not that guy. So, but children, they don't know.
And I was going to say, we don't know how young he is. He might be like the Matt Ford issue with crying, but if so, he writes a good email. So, thank you for joining us. Free Speech Nation this week. That was the week where a restaurant chain, Hooters, tried to sponsor kids' football team. Boris Johnson gave the public advice all about kettles. And Louis Schaefer unveiled his manifesto, which could revolutionise the country. I think it's mainly kettle-based as well. Yeah. Thank you to my panel, Louis Schaefer and Josh Howie, and my guests, Fraser Myers, Harrison Pitt and Charlie Rowley, and Joe Mackey. And if you want to join us in the studio and are an appropriate age and be part of the wonderful audience, you can go to www.sroaudience.com. Stay tuned for the brilliant Mark Dolan tonight. That's next. And don't forget the headline is on every night at 11 p.m. Thank you for watching Free Speech Nation. Goodbye.
Ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking warm and humid for many, with sunny spells, but also some heavy showers. Let's take a look at the details. A wet start to the day across northern Scotland, rather cloudy with showers, some of them heavy and potentially thundery in places. Temperatures around 16 Celsius and fairly light winds. Overnight rain will clear Northern Ireland, leading to a dry and bright start to the day with plenty of sunny spells. Temperatures around 15 Celsius. Cloud and showers continue to clear northwards over northern England on Monday morning, an increasing amount of sunshine moving in from the south though. A largely dry and bright start for North Wales and the Liverpool Bay area on Monday morning, with spells of sunshine. Generally light southerly winds for all, with temperatures around 16 degrees Celsius. A dry start across the East Midlands first thing on Monday morning, with any overnight light showers soon clearing away. Feeling rather muggy, with temperatures around 17 degrees Celsius and largely light winds. A fairly bright morning across East Anglia with some sunny spells, but also still the risk of a few scattered showers. Showers could be on the heavy side in places. A mostly dry start to Monday across southern England with sunny spells and light southerly winds, perhaps an increasing risk of a shower later. Feeling muggy with temperatures around 18 Celsius. Heading towards lunchtime and there will be plenty of sunny spells, but an increasing risk of some heavy showers, especially in the south. And that's how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GBNews, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I will immediately take action to reduce taxes.
I am winning the argument about tackling inflation, being responsible with our borrowing, about actually